There we are, ladies and gentlemen. We are here. Sorry for the delay. It's Marion Dozier of cocochats. And we are here tonight, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. It is Black History Month, as you know, and we're continuing recognizing that wonderful holiday. Each week this month, Coco Chats will talk to members of the African diaspora here in Palm Beach County who are involved in some way in community uplift. Now, that uplift can have to do with finances and money, for example, as with our guest today, Marlon White, who is the president of the Black Business Investment Corporation, which has provided more than $30 million to Black-owned businesses alone since it was founded in 1987. Now, did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? 30 million. The Black Business Investment Corporation only works to fund Black-owned businesses, as in those businesses owned by African Americans, Caribbeans, and Native Africans. And that work is critically important. As we celebrate what I prefer to call the African Diaspora Month here in February, we note that the U.S. Census Bureau says there are more than 2.5 million Black-owned businesses in this country, an increase of nearly 35% over the last decade alone, and that Florida ranks second for the most Black-owned businesses in this country, behind Georgia. Today's guest, Marlon White, could have had something to do with that data. In his more than 4 decades of working in the banking industry, he has focused on community uplift through his many roles at a variety of banks, including First National Bank in Alabama and in Florida at SunTrust Bank, Grand Bank and Trust, and PNC Bank, where he had been responsible for more than 125 clients who were each making up to $10 million a year, and from which he retired in 2018. Okay, that was also the same year, 2018, that he became president of BBIC, the Black Business Investment Corporation, on whose board he'd sat since it was created in 1987. He became president because the former president and founder, John Howard, retired that year at age 78. And I bring up Mr. Howard, by the way, because he had once been president of Palm Beach Lakes Bank, which was the first and only Black-owned bank in Palm Beach County. It had been located at the corner of Palm Beach Lakes and Australian Avenues, which today is home to a beauty hair supply business. Anyway, that's a little trivia for you. But anyway, today, Black Business Investment Corporation works with member banks in Palm Beach, Martin, St. Lucie, and Indian River counties to provide loan guarantees of up to 90% to new and existing Black-owned businesses. It partners with Palm Beach County's Department of Housing and Economic Sustainability to provide business loan guarantees, bonding, equity capital, and other types of assistance to Black-owned companies that can't obtain financing through other conventional sources. It also provides training and educational programs through partnerships with other organizations, including business plan preparation, marketing strategies, and management and accounting training. Next week, it will host its annual shareholders meeting at U.S. Trust Bank on Palm Beach, where it will lay out its 2019 accomplishments as well as its goals for 2020. Marlon White, president of the nonprofit Black Business Investment Corporation, welcome to Coco Chats. Yay! Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Now, as you look back over your very rich career working to support local business, what do you see? Do you see success? What do you see?
I see a number of things. Working with people in all segments of the market. And I think the biggest thing you see in looking at what you've accomplished over those years is that you see small businesses that started, and basically they went from having revenues of 100,000, 150,000, and now some of these people, $2 million, $10 million a year.
Yeah, and that's thanks in part to some of the work that you have done.
Yes.
And So were you always, you have degrees in accounting and in business administration. Were you always interested in money?
Yes, my first job, and I'm going to say it was sixth grade. My parents allowed me to be a shoe shine boy.
Really?
And now that may not sound like much,
Yeah.
but in 1966, I was able to earn $25 a day.
Wow.
A shoe shine was 25 cents,
Wow.
but I did such a good job. I would get tipped at 50 cents. So that
Wow.
sounds weird. And moved on from there, catapulted myself to being a newspaper delivery guy. Moved on from there, worked for the lawn care service.
Always in business.
And then from there on to work for a company that made pool tables.
Wow.
So I've always had a job since I was like in 6th, 7th grade.
And you grew up in the hood. You grew up in Liberty City.
I'm a very proud
in Miami.
byproduct of Liberty City. I was born in 1954. We moved out of Liberty City in 1967. I was going into about the 7th grade at the time. But it was a good situation.
Yeah, perfect.
So often people will pigeonhole or use broad strokes to describe a neighborhood.
Yeah.
I got to tell you that 85% of the people that I grew up with were very productive and good people. Some went on to be doctors, attorneys, bankers like myself.
Yeah.
So quite often when I hear people talk about Liberty City, I remind them that I have friends, and I don't like to sound like I'm insulting, but I said, I've got friends that make more money than anyone in this room, and it's an honest living.
And
so I make that point.
Okay. So tell us how you came to start working with the Black Business Investment Corporation, more than 30 years ago. What was going on in your career at the time?
At the time, I was a cluster manager for SunTrust Bank. At the time, it was known as Sun Bank.
Okay.
Chairman of the board approached me and said that there was something new going on in the marketplace, and he wanted me to represent the bank. He wanted me to take a position that we were going to look out for the best interests of the people we were working with. And if I had any pushback, let him know.
Okay.
The bank also at the same time said that we were going to allocate about $50,000. And with that $50,000 coupled with other people, we would be able to get this thing launched. So that's how I got involved. I was given an assignment. They thought it should be a black person at the table. Yeah. And I have to say that Dan Goodrum was very good about promoting that.
But were you interested in the beginning when they came to you, or did you see value in it? Did you think, or were you kind of like,
It goes back to me being an athlete in high school, and it was a way of paying it forward.
Entrepreneur, I guess, in the 6th grade.
There were people that worked with me that did not have to work with me, and I always felt like I owed something back. And I guess you can call it altruism or whatever. But it was just something that drove me.
So tell us what the BBIC does, and if you can.
Okay. The BBIC came in out of legislation that said that blacks were underserved.
And that was state legislation, I think.
Yes, it's small business, it's minority legislation in 1985. Basically, the state said at that time, we're going to allocate $7 million, and we're going to designate those dollars for Dade County, Broward County, Orlando, Orange County, Daytona, Jacksonville, Tampa, and Tallahassee. You may note I did not mention Palm Beach County. They thought that we could cohabitate and work with the monies they were going to allocate the million. Okay. We had a very good friend of mine, Tony Brown, that was given the assignment to negotiate with Broward County, and they agreed to split their $1 million allocation with Palm Beach County.
Wow. Okay.
Because there was a caveat, and that caveat called you to raise matching dollars. So if you didn't raise the money, you didn't get the matching dollars.
I see. Okay.
So 500 from them, achievable. 500,000 for us, achievable. We were successful in raising 525,000. The state matched that with 525,000, and we formed the BBIC with $1,050,000.
Okay, and then y'all do not specifically give new and existing Black-owned businesses money. What do y'all do with that? With the funding that y'all still have?
Yeah, we had the foresight to say that if we did direct lending, we would have to scale up with infrastructure, people, and all of that. And $1 million isn't enough to do that. So we went to the banks and said, would you guys allow us to do loan guarantees?
Oh, okay.
And the bank said, yes. So we took that $1 million, 50,000, and we made loan guarantees.
And essentially that means that if I came to y'all, brought my business to y'all and said, okay, I'm going to apply for a loan from my bank, from PNC, then what?
You would apply. They would use their normal underwriting guidelines. They would then come to us and say, well, there are a few things about this credit right that we're not comfortable with. We would say, can we mitigate those with the guarantee of anywhere from 10 to 90%? And basically, we would mitigate it by putting up that guarantee of 10 to 90%. The bank would say, we like that, and they would make that loan. Now, the beauty of doing it that way is that it allowed you to work with the bank for 2 to 3 years, and we call that the incubation period.
Right.
And during that time, if you did a very good job, at the end of that 2, 3, 4 year period, we would pull back our guarantee, and they had a new client, and we went on to help the next person. And it was beautiful because had we done the loans initially direct lending, at the end of 3 or 4 years, you would have had a credit score and something with the BBIC, but it would not have carried the same weight that a commercial bank carries.
Right.
So we thought it was a unique way of doing it. You get the guarantee, you incubate, and also we kept our costs down because we didn't have to build the infrastructure with $1,050,000.
Right. Huh. And so now, so the banks would come to you guys.
Yes.
And I guess that's why y'all have these member banks.
We have member banks, but everyone that invested, the first investor in the BBIC was Barnett Bank. It's now Bank of America.
Okay.
Their initial investment was $50,000. I, at the time, worked with SunTrust Bank. It was known as Sun Bank at the time. They invested $50,000. Southeast Bank that was around at the time invested $100,000, and on and on. So we raised that $525,000 that I spoke of earlier through those banks. And a few private organizations, Hard Drive, Echostone up at PGA, invested money, and some others. So all of those people are equity partners in the BBIC to this day.
Okay, and so in order for me to get support from BBIC, would I have to go to one of the banks that's considered a member, or? Two-part
answer here. Basically what happens is you could go to your bank, if your bank is a member of the BBIC, and they would facilitate that and then loop me on the back end. Or you could come directly to me, and I'm going to pose the question, who do you bank with here locally? And if that bank is a member of the BBIC, I'm just going to have a brief discussion with you to make sure that your ducks are in a row, so to speak. And I'm going to refer you back to your bank. I'm going to call a connection at that bank and say, this is what they're looking to do, and have them have that discussion with you.
Okay. All right. So when y'all first started, you started with that partnership with the state of Florida, which no longer exists.
No, it no longer exists. The state of Florida wanted to do something that was very unique without getting to a lot of details, and we thought it wasn't in our best interest to continue accepting money from the state. and giving them the right to do what we would call a clawback if we didn't meet certain requirements. So we severed that agreement about 4 years ago, 4 to 5 years ago. And because we have a large pool of money and the investments we get off that, we're able to self-sustain without doing that.
I see. And so when did the partnership with Palm Beach County start?
Oh, that's been since inception. We started in '87. Palm Beach County came along and said, we like what you're doing. We'd like to be a part of it. And they give us a grant each year. It was a much larger grant back in the early 90s than it is today, but it's still a substantial grant. Mm-hmm. And then we have to meet some criteria for Palm Beach County to encourage them to continue to work with us and provide that grant.
And I saw on their website, they've got a page dedicated to the BBIC.
Yeah, we have to do at least $500,000 in loans, which we easily exceed that every year. Yeah. We have to make those loans to at least 4 different businesses. We have to have interactions with at least 20 clients every month. And we also have to help create and retain at least 25 jobs. Now, just to give you a feel for what we did last year, because I know that's going to be a question, last year we did pretty close to $700,000 in new loans. The average loans was about $68,000. Last year we also interfaced with about 356 people. Okay, that's me talking to groups of people, them calling in, them coming into the office just to sit down and counsel with me.
And you are the human that they talk to, right? There's not a full staff over there. They
come
in and they talk to President White.
Yeah, I like to say I'm a one-man wrecking crew, okay? And also, we did 356 interactions with clients, and we created actually 35 jobs last year. So those are 35 people that didn't have a job, but because we did loans to expand existing businesses or start new businesses, those are 35 people that have jobs. Now, over the 30-something years we've been in existence, we've helped create and retain about 3,300 jobs.
Wow. And, that reminds me of this fact I saw as I was getting ready for today's show that said that if more Black consumers spent at least $1 out of every $10 with the Black-owned businesses, it would generate 1 million jobs for African Americans. And that just reminded me what you just said is, that y'all created 35 companies from just making those loans last year, helping to help these companies.
It feeds on itself.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, when you watch someone come in with a small sort of a business, and I say small because they've not had any sales, and you're able to lend them money, and you look at them 5 years later, and they're now revenues of $800 million, and they're able to employ 5 or 10 people, that's a beautiful thing.
That's a beautiful thing. So tell us what a day for you is like.
Well, the typical day starts and
you're supposed to be retired, but you're still
Yeah, I'm
working.
semi-retired, but I didn't want to throw my wife works for the school board, and she has another 2.5 years, so I thought it made very good sense for me to do something during the day as opposed to getting bored sitting around the house. But the typical day is getting in around 8:30, prepping for the day, opening up the phones at 9 o'clock. As people call in, I take those calls, I answer them. Doing reports that I have to submit to.
If I call BBIC, I would get Marlon White on the phone?
Yeah, if you call, you actually call the BBIC office right now at 7 o'clock. And if I recognize your name, you're going to get an answer because I have my phone set up to forward to my cell phone.
Wow.
So if it's someone that I know it's important to them that, hey, they tried to reach me during the day and they missed me, and they call me at 7 o'clock, I can take that call because, with this type deal, the thing that we do, when someone's trying to find out if they've been approved, that anxiety is unbelievable. So if they give you a 7 o'clock call and you know why they're calling, you pick up the phone. Maybe you don't have an answer for them, but you can tell them, hey, things are looking good. There aren't any hiccups. We're going to have a solid answer for you in the morning by 12.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so is there any particular type of business that y'all help, a certain size or a certain type of work or?
Well, not really. The only thing we do not do is we don't do any religious loans. Okay. We don't make any loans to churches or religious organizations. We don't do any investment property where someone wants to go out and buy rental property and rent those out. We just don't do that. But chiropractors, State Farm, all state insurance agencies, chiropractors, daycares.
What about a Jamaican restaurant?
We've done a few Jamaican restaurants. I can't disclose some that we've done because the one thing that makes us very successful is the confidentiality. I mean, if folks come in and do work with us, we don't talk about it unless they say you guys can talk about it. And I have some clients that want me to say, I got my start with the BBIC, and they're good about doing that. Others want to keep that confidentiality, and we're just like attorneys and bankers. If we don't have permission to talk about it, we don't. The smallest loan we've got on the books right now is about $10,000.
Wow.
The largest loan we've handled, $800,000. This year we'll do pretty close to $2.5 million, and just closed the loan total. We just closed the loan October 1st. That was $697,000. We just did a loan on December 23rd. That was $50,000. I've got in the rack right now looking for some things to happen. I can't be too specific. If I could, then you would understand. $582,000, another deal for $500,000, and the possibility of another deal for $250,000.
Okay, now y'all have been busy for a very long time. Y'all have given out lots of money, supported, How come nobody knows about BBIC?
That was a function of two things, and it was intentional and kind of unintentional. We only had so much money when we started out, and we could only guarantee maybe $1 million. Because we did such a good job, the banks that are partners said, you guys are doing a great job. Why don't we leverage that $1 million 2 to 1? So now that allowed us to guarantee up to $2 million in loans. And we got so good at it, they said, why don't we leverage it up to 3 to 1? So what we could not do is we could not be all things to all people. So if we advertised too much, we didn't have the ability to have 20 people call in a day and talk with us. So we had to grow slow and have what we call controlled growth. And that's what we did.
I see.
We only came live with the internet, a website here in the last 5 months.
Wow.
But word of mouth was our success. So it was intentional. We just couldn't handle a groundswell of people because we only had one person in the office.
Right.
And so we didn't want that. Now we're able to handle a lot more, but it was intentional. And now we have a website and everything else. So if you were to go out to www.pbcbbic.biz, B-I-Z, you're going to see a very nice website.
Right. All right. Very good. And that's what I was going to ask you. How can we get in touch with you? Because we're ending the show right at this minute. Thank you, Marlon White, for coming in from the BBIC, the Black Business Investment Corporation, to talk with us on cocochats. And thank y'all for listening in, ladies and gentlemen. And tell us.
You're supposed to say Julia's trying to ask you for 5 more minutes. It's all right.
Uh-oh.
You got
Thanks for tuning in.
No. You're on commercial. So you could come back and say bye.
Okay.
Commercial went on.
Okay.
Oh, because I just heard this.
Yeah.
Right.
So for what we do
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back on Coco Chats for just a couple minutes with Marion Dozier and my guest today, Marlon White. And while we were on break, he told me something really interesting. And please tell us what you'd said.
Yeah, what we were talking about is that last year we did about 10 loans, but of those 10 loans, 5 went to folks that were from either the Bahamas, Haiti, or Jamaica.
Of Caribbean descent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And basically those loans amounted to right at about $200,000. We did a little around $700,000 last year, but they did those loans. But right now in the racks, I've got a sizable deal that should get closed in the next 3 months. That will be $582,000. I won't say specifically what island that person's from because once again that confidentiality.
Right.
But whatever. I just did a loan this year also to a person that has a business. Her husband is from Jamaica. She's from Haiti.
Oh, wow.
And that was a $50,000 deal. So about 50-50 American. And, you know, it's tricky sometimes. I use the term black because I've had some people push back a little bit when I say African American because they'll say I'm Afro-Jamaican, Afro-Haiti, or whatever.
Right.
So I just say black when I kind of stumble through that. So, but a lot of my loans are whatever.
Yeah, but I think that's why we got to start using that term African diaspora because you know there's a whole bunch of us. Some of us got dropped off over there. Some got dropped off over here.
Exactly.
You know, but we're all from the same place.
Yeah, but we're seeing a lot of folks from various Caribbean islands that are coming in to want to at least talk, and we're doing some deals.
And you know, maybe that's because of you, because I understand that your mother is of Bahamian descent.
Well, my great-grandparents moved here from Governor Harbor, Eleuthera, okay, in the Bahamas in 1905. We actually were one of the first black families in South Florida in Miami. I'm from Miami. And when when they moved to Miami, my great-grandfather, Samuel White, our name is actually Micka White, MyCkleWhyte.
Wow.
His 4 brothers and his 3 sisters moved here, and they thought Micka White was too much name, so they dropped it to White, White.
The way we spell
and so in Liberty City and down in Coconut Grove. So if you see so if you see anyone with the last name White in Coconut Grove, they're my relative.
Wow.
Anyone you meet in the Bahamas is Micka White. They're all my relatives.
Really?
They're all my relatives.
Yeah.
Yes, so I have. I'm a descendant of the Bahama Islands through my great grandparents.
All right. Well, let us know. Let your Caribbean folks know how they can reach you if need be. I know you give us that website address again and your telephone number.
Sure. Our telephone number is area code 561-845-8055. Also, the website is www.pbcbbic.biz, B-I-Z.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Ms. Jillian, did you have any questions, Madam Trinidad?
Listen, I'm just blown away that this company exists. I'm just blown away.
Wow.
You know, and I'm so glad, Marion. I gotta give you props because you've been coming on here with really, really good interviews and interesting information for our community.
Yay.
And you are just another one added to that attache
Marlon
that she has brought to SupaJamz Radio with Coco Chats. Coco Chats is really and truly vested in building a community of people who will just rise, you know.
Rise.
Yes, just
Love
rise.
That. Love that.
As the tides rise, so do all the ships in the harbor. And you're helping to do that. Both of you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Invite me
Thank you,
back.
Ms. Jillian.
More than happy to do it.
All right.
And she said, Trinidad, last year I did and I can say